Okay, we are live, and Shinobi's going to be in a minute. He's on his way. And hello, namaste. Howard, brother, how are you doing? Hope you're well, man. Are you still with us? Black goo strengthens the bond between the practitioner and the entities. Black goo, yeah. You with us, Howard? Are you in real time? I see the numbers are updating there on the screen. It's just a bit of a delay at the moment. Big love, blessings, Om Shanti to all of you. Oh, Howard, I didn't hear back from you, by the way. I saw a message of yours that I missed, and I messaged you late. It's like some days after I was just having a bit of a crazy week. I don't know if you saw the message. I did respond. Yeah, man. So we're going to be having a really cool discussion here today. Let me just see that Shinobi, the link got through to where it's meant to be. There we go, Shinobi, brother. I've just jumped on live. There, he's online. He's on his way.
Hey, man. Can you hear me? Is my mic working? Okay. What's up, everyone in the chat? Sarah Life, Howard, how's it going, guys? Awesome. All right, looking forward to this conversation today. I think Franklin's going to be back in a sec. He's had some issues with his mic. So, yeah. There he is.
Namaste, brother. How are you doing?
Yeah, really good. Thank you. Yourself?
Can't complain. It's been a crazy morning. I'm sorry I was late, by the way. My son's mother just...
I messaged you to say I was going to be 10 minutes late, and you sent me the link 10 minutes later. So, yeah, it worked out well.
Cosmic telepathy. Then my son's mother went absent without leave. I don't know where she went, like an hour ago. So I've been sort of playing teacher, doing multitasking. So, big love. Zerilat. How are you doing, Zerilat? I hope you're good, man. Speaking of which... yeah, man. It's been a crazy week, to be fair, and I think it's going to get a little bit more crazy as this week goes by, because it is like an intense energy. I just need to silence my phone because it's the time of day when the spam calls start. You know, they're going to try and phone me to sell life insurance and whatever else they think I need. So yeah, Howard, I was saying it was on Facebook. And I sent you a message back on Facebook saying, like, I hardly ever check my Facebook. So I'm sure it was you, Howard. Was it not you? Maybe I'm mistaken. I thought it was you. But anyway, yeah, so let's jump in the deep end. Let's get rolling. Let's get flying. Picking up from where we were talking about. Oh, it's not you. Okay, Howard. It must have been someone else with the name Howard. Where were we last week? We had gotten to the point where I think we were starting to sort of breach into the esoteric with the way in which this blue beam works. We were talking about the light, right? We were talking about how the light frequencies breach into spiritual realms and how all of these different technologies are interfacing with different aspects of our consciousness field, because our consciousness is electromagnetically transmitted into the physical body, as we know. So any electromagnetic fields can disturb the process of the information coming into the body and being processed by the brain. So this is why we know, like, VLF can affect your brain. ELF is actually illegal because of the way in which it stops the flow of the energy into the body and changes the way the brain modulates this information. So I think, like, the next part of the conversation logically would go into the Da'at, the Qlippoth, the eighth sphere, and just exactly who these beings are. We were touching on the soulless as well, were we not? If I recall.
You just say ELFs are illegal. Extremely low frequencies we're talking about, yeah?
As far as I know, they used to be. When I last researched this a decade ago, they were illegal because they can stop your heart.
Yeah, I think that might have been what happened in 2020. It was frequency based. Whatever happened, then 100% it was frequency based. And yeah, I was surprised to hear you say that it's illegal, because I don't think it is anymore, because electric cars emit ELFs, wind turbines emit ELFs. There's their fan upstairs seems to emit like a low frequency as well. And our storage heater here, our radiator, seems to emit extremely low frequency. It's kind of like a woo, woo, woo. And it's the same with our dehumidifier we've got as well. It's a smart dehumidifier. We've not linked it to Wi-Fi or anything like that, but I'm just very aware of that. There seems to be a lot of very quite low sort of like hums. I know people who live near wind turbines have been affected by them very negatively. And I think it's the same with is it the same with electricity pylons as well? They emit low frequencies too. But yeah, it seems to be, rather than just electricity pylons, it's now electric cars emitting them, which people obviously like sit in when they're driving as well. And when they drive past, it sounds like a spirit or something. It's like, it's a really kind of like dissonant tone that these cars have, which they don't need to have. I 100% believe they're part of the weaponry of the machine. So yeah, I was just surprised to hear you say that, because I don't think they're illegal anymore, or they must have found a loophole, because I just noticed this low frequency everywhere. It's kind of emerging.
No, I think let me rephrase what I was getting at. I think it's illegal to manufacture ELF producing pylons or towers. As in, there's a certain background ELF radiation, which is, but ELF, as far as I know, can stop your heart. Let me check. Can cause stroke. I believe it can cause a stroke. It can stop the heart. No, not stroke. I think it can definitely cause problems with the heart, especially for people who have pacemakers, which includes the electromagnetic 50 to 60 hertz, is not scientifically proven to stop hearts in humans. Am I talking about the right? Extremely low frequency. Yeah. I remember studying up on this stuff. It must have been about 2015 or 2010 or 12, whatever it was. I remember trying to research whether they were using this technology, and I believe that there was like a ban on creating technology. Now Google says that it's not bad for you, but I'm pretty sure that that's why you've got VHF and UHF. Yeah, ultra high frequency, and VHF for radio frequencies. I do believe that they have weapons based on ELF weapons that can actually stop your heart. And so if the output is high, it can be extremely dangerous for humans. And now they're trying to say that the science is out on this. I just find that really strange, you know. Yeah, that's very strange. But this is what we notice as time flies by. The science changes, the words change. A lot of what we're told and what we're taught changes. The occult changes, right? Astrology is changing. Numerology, they're trying to change everything around us. So why shouldn't they be doing that too? I'm going to actually go and take a look and see if I can find some real information on that other than Google AI, because I do remember doing a stint of research when my friend was assassinated in 2011. Yeah. And when he was a prolific activist, and the causes of his passing were irregular, and the coroner had told us there was some circumstances around his, the observations of his body, his corpse, that didn't add up, but he was too scared to talk about it. And I pushed the coroner for about 2 weeks, and then I thought, no shame, this guy's afraid. And he was clearly couldn't talk about it. And 6-7 months later, he tried to contact me a number of times, tried to call me out of the blue, which is so strange because him and I had no reason to talk. But he had waited like more than 6 months before trying to contact me. And at the time that he was contacting me, I was very busy. And I had been speaking to Alex's mother, my friend who had passed. And she didn't want any investigation. She didn't want any discussion, because a lot of us activists wanted a proper investigation called for, right? Because this guy was healthy. He just suddenly keeled over, done. With a sudden thing that just grew in his head out of the blue. They couldn't even decide what it was, what kind of a foreign body it was. They couldn't call it a tumor. They couldn't call it anything. According to the coroner, it was some weird, never seen this before. So, you know, there were circumstances around that. So I started researching. This was 2011, 2012. And that was when I came into contact with ELFs, and that there were ELF weapons that had been invented that could be, you know, soft stir assassination tools. That someone could drive outside your car, outside your house, and point an antennae at you, right? And track you with your phone, and then just have someone sit there with an antenna for about 3 hours every night, late hours of the night when you're sleeping, right? And hit you with this extreme ELF frequencies every night for like a week to build up the radiation in your body. And that's what I think happened, to be honest with you. So it's definitely something to look into more. But at that time, when I was researching, the internet was free. There was no AI controlling us, you know. 2012, you could, in 2012, you were still able to get access. For example, you try and find the access. I challenge all of you that are watching. I challenge you to go and find the reference where the World Health Organization gave permission to the New Guinea government to forcibly microchip 50% of the Papua population. Go and find that. It doesn't exist. And I'd written large articles about this in 2012. Yeah. And I'd done extensive research. I'd done research into who paid for it, where the money came from for the actual program, who was running the program, when the actual decision was taken by the World Court, how it had been applied for, who were the people that had applied. I had done my due diligence of research, and I'd written this large Facebook article about it and put it out like virally. It had gone quite viral, and it was also referenced in a number of newspapers. You know, it was primetime news. Another thing you can't find information about. You must have been quite young when this happened. Do you remember when you were a little boy hearing about the first human cloned, and that it was a British woman that had a clone baby in the UK?
No, but I do remember them cloning a goat or a sheep, and it being a hybrid between a human and a goat or something like that. And I remember looking at a picture of this weird thing. I remember that.
Like, who was the British lady? I wish I had kept more information about this years ago. Which British lady? And she had to run away. Lady had a cloned baby in UK, or was it Europe, in early 2000s. You won't find any information. So like Google has taken a lot of, you see, no. Now they're talking about Brigitte Boisselier, is a French chemist and religious leader best known for her claims. Scientists announced Friday that her group produced the first cloned human baby. Huh. They haven't scrubbed it completely. So there is a reference to it in 2002. There we go. And that's when I think I remember hearing about it. But it was prime news in the UK because the lady who'd had this baby had to run away from the paparazzi and from all of the news coverage. And she had vanished. No one knew what had happened to her. Somehow her specific information had gotten leaked into, prime time news. But yeah, so let's get back onto the topic of the energetic frequencies.
Before we move on, I just want to mention that the guy who heavily promoted Project Bluebeam, Sergey Manast, he died of a heart attack in very suspicious circumstances. There's so much to do with like signals and stuff which most people don't understand. Like, they're able to make cats change direction using microwave pulses. They've invented a heart attack gun as
I'm sure he will be back in a second. There we go.
Not sure what happened there. It might be my Wi-Fi.
It must be because your pictures. So the last thing you said was it sort of faded. You just basically started and you dropped off.
Right. Okay. So yeah, my Wi-Fi today wasn't great either. I'm pretty sure I read yesterday that there's some pretty strong solar activity we've had. I hope that my internet's all right. So I was just mentioning about frequencies and signals and how they can be used, like weaponized against us, that most people don't understand. That they've managed to be able to make cats change direction using just microwaves. In the 70s, there was a patent to alter human brain activity using radio waves in the 70s. That's 56 years ago. That's a long time ago, altering brain using radio waves. Now you have Apple AirPods, which is mapping the human brain. And then you have this talk of humans interfacing with machines. Let's flip that, because we know everything's inverted. It's not us interfacing with machines, it's machines interfacing with us, and we're the ones paying for it. There was also a heart attack gun created as well. And the guy who wrote or promoted Project Bluebeam, Sergey Manast, he died of a heart attack under very suspicious circumstances. I've mentioned that before, that his daughter was taken away from him because he was homeschooling her. and he was put into prison as well, I think, for a year, and then after he got released from prison, he died of a heart attack. So there's plenty of ways in which signals and frequencies can affect us. Like in World War One, there was a thing called a squawk box, which was a really large speaker which had sound waves like 120 decibels. I think it was in 2001, it might have been in the 1990s. I think it might have been in Iraq. There was, I can't find where my notes are. Oh, here we go. Yeah, the 1st of March 1991, which I got kind of obsessed with the number 6 for a while because I saw it everywhere. So I've written down the date as the number 6, the 1st of the 3rd, 1991, because all of these events seem to happen on either a 3, 6, or 9. It's crazy. It's either a 3, 6, or 9. So there was a sudden rebellion, and there was a radio signal sent out called Free Iraq or something like that. And basically these people like all put down their weapons because they had the fear of God put into them. And this was like 30 years ago. So they've weaponized frequencies. This is why I call Project Bluebeam Project Fear, because they're projecting fear and they're using the frequency of blue to do this. This is why we see CERN with a 666, Google Chrome with a 666, the World Economic Forum with a 666, because that's the frequency of blue, 6.66. With the direct energy weapons we saw in Maui, that with that blue beam, where all of the blue things were fine because blue doesn't burn blue, it burns everything else. That frequency would have been 666, and that's the mark of the beast. I just call it the blueprint, because this beast system has left a trail which we can follow, and then that's what we're going to get into today with this projecting fear and this technology being weaponized against us. This isn't. It says recording hasn't started, by the way, so I'm not sure if this is uploading to my YouTube or not. It doesn't really matter, but oh right, it's going to do it afterwards. It's weird. It says recording has started. Please stay in the studio after.
Maybe it's your internet.
Maybe.
If I think StreamYard, if your internet isn't very good, then it won't start the local recording until after the show in order to give you the best quality. We had this problem with the other, the other system we were using, which was Riverside. Riverside doesn't have that clever little fix. So if your internet is bad, the recording crashes the show. Yeah.
I couldn't use Riverside a while ago with Stein because my upload speed is like the worst it can possibly be, and I can't get anything any better here as well. So right now I'm in the bedroom with a Wi-Fi extender. It's half term, so Wi-Fi is not great. So I hope it holds out, because I prefer being in the front room where it's like lighter and bright and stuff. But sometimes do a podcast in here, so it's fine. Hopefully it holds out. It seems to be okay at the moment. So
yeah, man. Howard was also mentioning in the thing, he was talking about the voice skull, and I think the voice skull has got to do with the ELF frequencies as well as a range of frequencies. I actually met a guy in the park in Croydon, the big park in Croydon, in 2013. They were testing the voice skull technology in his head, and he had an implant in Germany, an ocular implant put into him by the military without his consent or knowledge. And it ended up with, he wasn't able to do anything about it, even though he had NHS reports, ultrascan reports. He knew the part numbers of the parts inside his head, right? But he couldn't have them removed because the NHS refused to touch it because it was military hardware. And they're not allowed to touch military hardware. And when he went to the military, the DoD, they refused to talk to him about it. So he went for FOI, Freedom of Information. And a lot of the information was just blacked out, redacted. So I read the reports, the FOI reports. I saw his ultrasound reports. I got the NHS report where they are citing the particular piece of technology, the part number, and explaining in a letter that they are not allowed to operate because he wanted it removed. They are not allowed to operate because this is military hardware and he needs to approach the military. So he was shut down. And he claimed that he was getting this technology beamed into his head directly. So, this is a real thing. And I met this guy in a park. I actually put him in touch with a lady, Joanna Summerscales, who was running the Amash projects, because sometimes she would consult. Because I help. One of the things that I do is, over the years, I've had clients who are suffering from this come to me, right? That are suffering from, they've been in the military or they've come from a military family. They've had technology, psychic, spiritual attacks, entities, all sorts of things. These are all connected. And very often you'll find that the people that are suffering from this kind of technology that you're talking about very often have spiritual entities attached to them. And they usually have a background connection with the military. Normally, it's a generational connection with their father and their father's father and father's father were all prominent figures in the military. That's normally the pattern that I've noticed. But anyway, I used to consult for Joanna Summerscales, and I had actually put this guy in contact with her to try and help him find international surgeons and lawyers and raise money for him to help him to be able to get the hardware removed. But he never could. It was wired into his spine. And he went overseas, and even the surgeon said it's not, they can't remove it without, they might paralyze him, right? That's what they were saying. They said like the consequences could be serious. They couldn't infer, they didn't know what they were dealing with. They could scan the wiring, and the wiring went from his ocular implants into his brain, into his spine. And he had different wired into different parts of his spine. I mean, we're talking very serious technology here. And obviously it had been done to him without his consent or without his knowledge. So I think this often crosses over. And namaste, Vince. How are you doing, Vince? I hope you're good. I hope you're thriving, man. Hope you guys are all good. Yes, and General Shinobi is very blurry, the star. He is, unfortunately, that's his upload speed. Not much we can do about it. It just is what it is. But yeah, so carry on.
What you're talking about reminds me of, have you heard of Morgellons disease?
Yeah, as far as I know, I mean, they cite that as being a product of a tick bite or ticks. Morgellons disease, you'll find it centered in the north of England, and it's not so far from the nuclear bases. Actually, they've got a couple of nuclear plants up in the north of England. I'm sure you know about it. And there are places on the outskirts of those nuclear plants where they have these particular ticks that apparently bite you and give you Morgellons disease. But that Morgellons disease does seem like it's. I keep finding baby spiders all over myself. They're hatching, man. I'm like a spider magnet. For the most part, they don't bite me, so it's okay. But I'm scared I'm going to squash them. I'm scared I'm going to hurt them. And I never hurt spiders. I have a lot of respect for the little fellas. But Spider is a web spinner, She spun this reality, this Maya for us. So she's an important part of our exploration into the other side, the underworld. Namaste. How you doing, dear Zerilat? I hope you're having a good day, man.
Hey, man. I'm doing good. From periodically, I'll need to check in with my GPS, but I'm good for the first length of my not memorized journey, which will be over by the end of the week anyway.
You're driving for a week?
This assignment has me on one particular commute every day. I'm in construction, so I go from job site to job site.
Right.
Yeah.
Got you.
Yeah. So I got 90 minutes because I had to take a long one to get back into employment.
Okay, sweet, man. So yeah, if you could just mute yourself when you're not talking, because we can hear your car in the background. Yeah, so this Morgellons disease, as far as I know, it creates a grid through your body, right? And it's almost like a metallic kind of a substance that grows. Is it organic? Is it not organic? I don't know the story of Morgellons. I think it's one of the best cover-ups that there is, because I've known people with Morgellons. I've had a lot of clients with Morgellons, and it feels like it's unnatural, like, you know, maybe nanotechnology. I don't know. What are your thoughts?
Silica-based technology, silica-based life forms is what they want to make things out of. And the jab, like the calamari stuff that's in the arteries of many of the mRNA people, that's it's the same. It's not the same, but it's the same like level of technology.
Yeah, I reckon. I'm pretty sure Morgellons. Well, I think it comes from, it's something to do with what's in the air, what's being released in the air. And the reason why I think this, because music videos, films, TV series, they speak 1,000 words. And there's a Katy Perry song called E.T., Extraterrestrial. And in that music video, there's about a 2-second clip where I can't remember what the lyrics are, which is probably a good thing, but it basically shows an airplane leaving a white trail, and then it shows a horse having sex, like penetration, and then it shows like a machine. And it's like in songs like this, they're telling us that stuff is coming from the sky, this smart ass technology, it's entering us, and they're literally doing tests on us. And I brought that up because it sounds like this military technology that was planted inside your friend, that person you knew. It sounds like they're trying to do this on a mass scale. They're trying to test on us. And last December, there was a worldwide fog, which was very mysterious. I'm not sure if you guys remember that. Everywhere in the world was covered by fog. And then shortly after, no, I think it was in December, loads of like SUV-sized drones were spotted in America. And then shortly after that, there was a worldwide fog, and people were finding little bits, particles in this fog. And I would theorize that this fog was giving people respiratory issues. And that's what this does, is it gives people respiratory issues. And when they're injecting this stuff into people in 2020, like in Japan, they actually found black bits of black stuff that basically they're trying to get this not just with machines, but they're trying to do it on the side without our consent. Some people will be up for it, but they need the majority of people to uptake this technology. So they've been testing on it for a while, and that's what I think this Morgellons is them trying to kind of merge this technology. And the way I see it is that end game is they want to extract our soul, our identity. This is why, especially in 2020, we saw so much cult-like behavior with people's identities literally extracted from them. That would be what Rudolf Steiner spoke about, the eighth sphere. When we extract our identity or our soul or our core, that is our spark of wisdom, that's our internal flame, and that needs to be extracted from us so that these other beings that are stuck in the astral can enter. And I believe that this is what they're trying to do. This is why they're messing with DNA. This is what they did in 2020. it all links together with Project Stargate as well, this emergence of artificial. They want to try and put this stuff into us so that we can basically become the vessels for these beings, because I don't think they can enter this realm via just artificial. Even though they're creating artificial wombs, that is the next step to create artificial humans, like from birth, so that they can plant their seed into these babies basically. But they're trying to do it with us. They're experimenting, putting this foreign technology inside of us, and at the same time, while they're putting this inside, they're extracting our core identity, which is our soul or our ba.
The fluid injection that changes your inner physiology, this concept, you see it in if you watch any of the Borg episodes in Star Trek, where you see the Borg go take someone through an assimilation process. It's also the same process to make a Cenobite in Hellraiser, and both of them have the same stylist. Is the fluid changes your physiology so that way synthetic parts can attach to it, right? It fills the vessel with what it needs to become the synthetic cybernetic organism. And if any of you have watched my interviews with Sean Bond and Yiza Arzliben, they've been unveiling the ancient alien intelligence machines that ruined South America just before we showed up. Because we've been here before and we're back.
Yeah, that's an interesting point. I think, like, when we talk about Morgellons, and here's an interesting point. I remember coming across theories, like, once again, decade ago. No, 2 decades ago. Is it really that long? No, it's not 2 decades ago. I'm exaggerating. Or 2012. 2013. I think that must have been a time when I was researching this. I was doing a lot of research over those years. And maybe even before, maybe 2008, I did different kinds of research over the decades. But the BT cotton came up. And the reason I was researching the BT cotton was I'd come back from India in 2007, and I'd done a full research about Seminus seeds and all of the Indian farming practices, and how much of the cotton is farmed in India and whereabout, and what percentage of the world's cotton is BT cotton. And BT cotton, for those who don't know, is a genetically modified strain of cotton that mixes animal and plant genetics. And so you can see that Morgellons is one of the most debated topics, and that there are different experts that have different opinions on it. And obviously, there are certain experts that are endorsed by the state and the organized groups. But I think you might be right, Shinobi. I think there's a spiritual, psychic component to this. And I think that the ticks are part of the program. I think it's a cocktail. I think that this is an example. This is part of an example of the psychic attack, which I categorize as being part of the larger scale of the Blue Beam projects, which is basically to overwhelm our senses with information. And so fibromyalgia, for example, right? I know a lot of people who suffer from fibromyalgia, but here's the thing. A lot of the people that I know that suffer from fibromyalgia also suffer from entity attacks. Isn't that interesting? Seems to be a connection with fibromyalgia and entity attacks. A lot of the people I've known that have Morgellons have also been very sensitive to funny dreams, speaking about being abducted in their dreams. So I think that there is an extraterrestrial, if not an extraterrestrial, but some kind of a psychic component where these things seem to be connected. I don't know. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I have the thought of the reality of etheric implants. Many of us have them. There's also the etheric level of genetic tampering, right? Like, we make great utility of our chakra systems. They're here. They're part of our physiological spiritual technology. They have their associated glands in the body. However, that system was meant to interfere with our relationship to effectively the Dantian system, which is the tripart human soul, which is keeping you in that reminder of the 3, which is also the 9, right? Because they don't want us to know that we are 9. I am 9. There are 9 consciousnesses in council at all times within me. This is part of the stuff that makes you as what you are. The more conscious you are of it, the more control you are of it. And the way they've tampered with Kundalini consciousness with all these different Eastern practices has been about like forcing too much on something, right? You're overwatering the plant. You're frying the flower in the sun. It's all this stuff. You just have to treat it like a vine that grows on you. That's kind of more of a parasite, but the parasite's not harming anyone, and you haven't figured out how to get rid of it yet. But you can work around it. That's the ultimate truth with that, because it was installed later when the incursion happened. The dark sorcerers were taking advice from the dark ones.
Yeah, I definitely think there's something to it. Shinobi, I don't know where Shinobi is. He's got this connected here, but it's not. He needs to refresh that and come back in. His mic and his thing was off. Namaste, Tomru. How are you doing? Shinobi's going to be coming back in. Yeah, YouTube was rejecting my comments. I was trying to tell Shinobi that his mic and his cam were disconnected and that he needs to re-enter the studio because there was like a little red flag next to his box, his name. And that's why he couldn't go on the screen. And YouTube blocked it twice. I don't know what I said. Apparently it was spam because I was talking to Shinobi. Isn't that weird, huh? I've never really seen YouTube rejecting spam of the actual person who's doing the show. That's very strange. But, you know, AI for you, this is what we get. I think the idea that you share there about etheric implants is a very real one. You know, I deal with this with clients as well. And, you know, from time to time I have to, wow, there's a brand new you. Look at Shinobi looking all sharp and sorted there.
Sorry about that, guys. Yeah, sorry, I missed the last like 5-10 minutes of what you guys were saying, so I'll just catch up.
Yeah, brother. Don't worry, it wasn't anything extreme. So we're talking about etheric implants and how there's a component of etheric implants with many of these diseases. And I think Morgellons is an example. I think it's also related to the genetic BT cotton as well. I've heard different experts talking about this, that it starts with Lyme's disease, which is genetically modified ticks. And then you wear the genetically modified cotton, and that helps to transform what's in your body to go from the Lyme's disease to Morgellons. And then there's an element, I think, X ingredient of etheric implants that get done energetically in the same way that people suffering from fibromyalgia, in my experience, often have etheric implants. and it's something that I rub up against every once in a while. I've recently been contacted by someone as well, so this does happen. Every few months. I probably get a client like this. It's not the most common, but over the last decade, 2 decades, the last decade has become more common. The decade before, it wasn't so common. I mean, I did consult for Joanna Summerscales back in 20 years, no, 2011, 12, 13, whatever it was. And there I discovered a lot more people, but it's funny, it's becoming more of a thing these days, etheric implants, and usually the people have a connection with the military. That's very interesting. So I think what you're saying there, Zerilat, seems to be on point. And I think when you say that more people have etheric implants and what they realize, I think etheric implants can be placed into us by technology, media. I think the content that we watch, the vibrational frequencies of the content that we watch, can become a primer. It's like a seed that can be a primer to prepare one for etheric implants. I don't know. What do you guys think?
Well, it's interesting. I didn't realize Lyme disease was connected to Morgellons. I've heard Lyme disease can be caused. Sorry, not caused. Lyme disease can be cured by sunlight and getting lots of daylight. So why that's interesting is because they want to block out the sun. They don't want us having daylight. Can you see the connection between this foreign technology and blocking out the light? If Lyme's disease then becomes Morgellons, well, how do you get people to have Morgellons? Block out that light and make sure people are always on getting lots of blue light, like LED lighting and on screens. And of course, TVs and, well, all screens, phones is a black mirror. And I think this black mirror was used by sorcerers to connect to spirits. It's like a window, a portal, right? This technology is a portal for us to connect to each other, but it's got a blue light in it, and this blue beam, first of all messes with our nervous system. And if we want to use the term Merkaba, the Mer, the Ka, and the Ba, the Mercury being the central point that connects, the messenger of the gods, connecting the heart mind, the Mercury, or the Vega nerve connecting the brain and heart. I sense that's what this technology is trying to sever, this division on all fronts. It's this kind of divisive force, and this black mirror, which is using this blue light is magnetic. So I do sense at the same time as it draining us, and first of all, technology like Facebook, that was created the day after LifeLog by DARPA stopped. So it's military technology, Instagram, Meta, Facebook. It's military technology that we're using. And it's destroying our identity, which is our core essence of who we are. Because the majority of the time online, most of the internet is just AI bots that people think they're talking to real people, but they're not. So this information enters your brain at the same time as your essence or your light being pulled out by this blue light or this blue beam. There's a lot of fear and stuff on social media. It's basically, it's a snare for us. We have the internet, which is a net, and the World Wide Web, which is a web which can connect us all, but at the same time we can get stuck. The same time it's a weapon. We can use these weapons that have been put there to use against us in our favor, as we're doing today, to talk about this information, to talk about these technologies and how they've been weaponized. But with emojis as well, the 72 sigils of Solomon, I believe, are the 72 emojis. They look very similar. So it's like, as you're casting this digit, sending these signals, people are using magic that they don't understand, I believe. And I believe that there's all of this technology that we think is just kind of just this hardware, but really there's software inside it which is being used to manipulate us. And this blue light, first of all, it makes you more susceptible to being controlled and manipulated. CIA have done experiments with this blue light technology. This is why it's on screens. This is why people are so easily led and manipulated. And that directly links to the identity and our soul and our core, because we're having that extracted on many, many fronts. So yeah, there's technologies that we don't understand.
Yeah, it's interesting,
2001.
Yeah.
2001: A Space Odyssey. The dimensions of all of the most effective viewership has been the 16:9 aspect ratio. The movie screen in which you're watching 2001 was a 16:9 aspect ratio, and you are watching an obelisk on the screen control the mind of man in a 16:9 aspect ratio of its own, three-dimensionally. Yeah, these black obsidian scrying slabs are miniaturized versions of the monolith if you follow the narrative of what's happening to the main character after you've interpreted the introduction side of the film, right? This is all about that alien artificial intelligence factor, which is what happened with Hal interfacing with an alien AI. And it sent him to their planet where they changed his genetics in some way, shape, or form. And then when he died, he got reincarnated as the Moonchild, coming in on Earth. That's basically what's going on. That's part of the dark occultist's black magic ritual work. And Kubrick was paid handsomely to rope that into the moon landing.
Yeah, I think there's definitely a correlation there. When we look at the the Moon-Saturn matrix, it's essentially what we're talking about here. This, which is an old occult paradigm, which relates to obviously the age of the Moon and the age of Saturn, which were earlier ages. We're now in the age of Earth, and these are like occult works from Rosicrucianism, and I think you'll find it in Theosophy and Anthroposophy. I think it's done its rounds. And so, there's definitely this lunar connection. And I think the lunar connection, that other planet might actually be the moon, if I'm going to be honest. Seems like there could be some correlation. Just exactly as to what the moon is a question. But, I wonder whether it's a gateway to another world. I wonder whether these planets are gateways. What we see as planets are gateways to another dimension. That's quite highly possible, living in this multidimensional paradigm that we do live in. And I think that, the Moonchild, the idea of Moonchild makes me think of Aleister Crowley, of course. What did he call his daughter? What are her names? And it also makes me think of Frank Zappa. What was Frank Zappa's daughter called? Moon? I forget. She called herself Moon in the end because it was a bit much. But yeah, I do think that the idea of this remodeling of the genetics in a whole is a big thing, which is sort of why we started off by mentioning that the actual Eve that I mentioned before, right? And just to bring it back to what we were talking about before, you guys remembered a goat, right? Well, I remember this. just to bring it back, since we're talking about the genetics, yeah. I remember this being a big thing, and so I did put on the screen earlier, but here I'll draw a bit of attention to it. Her name was Eve. This was in 2002. And the 31-year-old American woman was born outside of the United States. The rumors that I had heard in 2002 was that she was born in the UK and then removed from the UK to somewhere else in Europe, and from there to Eastern Europe, and from there I don't know where, probably Southeast Asia, somewhere where there was an extradition, or and it's quite a big story. But this was big news when I was, well, I think was it 2003 or 4 when it was big news? Regardless, it was big news at some point. No, it was during that time, man. They say 2002. I'm wondering, was it not before then? Anyway, going back in time, I almost swear it would have been 2001. But I can see how it was 2002. Maybe I was talking about it at a later stage and the news had come up then. And I remember having lots of discussions with people about this, about the fact that they've been cloning people. And at that time, it was completely illegal. So I think what they've done is they've manufactured our vaccines. They've manufactured genetic foods, genetically modified foods, and genetically modified cotton, BT cotton. I started a textile company in 2013, which was 2013, 2014, which was organic art on Goth's organic clothes, right? Cotton, hoodies, a couple of like trainer kinds of pants, but we were focusing on tops because my ex-girlfriend was an artist and she used to do sacred geometry. And we ended up getting the latest state of the art at that time was an M4 printer, massive, huge textile printer that could print in the oldest, most natural inks that you could find in the UK. And anyway, we were doing this. So I did a lot of research into textiles. Like I did my research because it was part of our marketing strategy, right? Was the fact that at that time, up to about 80% of the world's cotton was genetically modified BT cotton strains, which is incredible when you think about it. By now, it must be 90. I think we're all wearing genetically modified cotton. So I think these things also go into the pores of our skin. They break down and we absorb this into our system and it gets sort of confused. Genetics gets broken down and there's a chance that our genetics can take parts of this. So I think that the psychic component of brainwashing us starts on a mental level. They plant the seeds, they get us ready for the mental realignment. Then they hit us with frankenfoods and frankenfabrics, right? And when the frankenfoods and the frankenfabrics and the mental realignment come together, then they hit us with the third thing, the vax. And between the frankenfoods, frankencotton, vax, and all the other synthetic cottons that we're wearing as well. And I wonder whether there's a connection with synthetic fibers being worn on the body and what some of the synthetic things that they claim they might be finding in Morgellons. Although a lot of claims are unverified because it's very tightly controlled. I did come across research, once again, decades ago, that Morgellons might have been a militarily created disease as part of a test for creating weapons. And it's like a slow weapon that you can attack a neighboring country with, right? And that generation gets sick. And that country spends all of its money on healthcare trying to look after the sick. And that way you get to dominate economically, So whether that's true or not, I don't know. A lot of this is unverified. Though, as it relates to the 8th sphere and the Qlippoth and the Da'ath, I thought that's quite interesting because it stands to reason that the beings that are out there in the Da'ath, in the 8th sphere, the Qlippoth, running under the fallen angels, as we like to call them, or the Nephilim, that were cast down into the underworld and sealed off from us in a little pocket. those beings are desperately trying to get access to this physical realm. And in order for them to be able to operate through us, I think they need to change our DNA. I think they need to change our genetics. I think they need to change our psychic conditions using mind control. They want to change our bodies because we are very powerful beings. We don't know how powerful we are, right? So we can actually influence them with our thought power, right? We can control them. We can move them around like chess pieces on a board if we want to. So they want to downgrade our DNA and mangle our DNA to the point where we lose touch with our personal sovereignty and our personal spiritual power in order for us to be more easily manipulated and thus become hosts for these entities. I think that's very much connected with many of these diseases. Because if think about it, if you've got like a heavy disease like Morgellons or something, you spend all of your time and your life and your energy just trying to fight that disease. It leaves you wide open to psychic attacks. I don't know. What do you guys think? Do you think that's plausible?
Soul code genetics. I've been talking about this ever since everybody started talking about the cloning system in the Epstein files. So what I actually have done is I highly recommend on my channel, I did a collaboration session with King of Cups, Chris, who's a friend from back in the day when I was on Weaving Spiders. And we're still in touch. We're going to work together in the future. And me and him, and I can't remember if there was someone else there. Forgive me if I'm forgetting a friend. We covered Guardians of the Galaxy 3 and broke that down because that guy was a evil geneticist also, who was doing all sorts of eugenics and trying to create the Gattaca future for the entire fucking universe. Right? So our soul codes is how the invasion happens. They tamper with the codes like this. It takes the channel, closes off consciousness, like the way they regulated consciousness with Kundalini, but it closes off consciousness to a thrall-like state of mindless servitude. And then you can be hosted like an agent in the Matrix, and you'll be networked in on their 6G plus grid that'll be coming by the time they're doing this with real synthetic control mechanisms in our world, right? But those of us that are keeping it pure, we have to fight off the infection, but we're not going to be compromised.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the end game is they want us to be avatars. Like, this is all a game to these. I think we could call them like the technocrats, or they seem to be soulless beings already. Like, you see it even like in the music industry. Let's use Ariana Grande as a example. The actor in Wicked. She seems to clearly have a handler. There's a music video of her having like this MK Ultra stuff done to her, like her memory wiped, and now she just kind of seems like she's just like this, like a drone. And they do experiments on celebrities, like this whole notion of selling your soul. And there's like people like, oh, how could you even sell your soul? Like, that's not a thing. But all it means is to extract your identity, give your identity over to another one, so you just become a puppet for the machine. And this is what they want to do with all of us. They want. I've had this thought for a while, and having conversations like this and quite a few before this one as well, it's kind of made me realize that my imagination isn't so far off what's becoming reality. Because I've been thinking for a while that there are beings perhaps beyond the ice wall, like beyond this realm that we can see, that want to use us as avatars. And I heard that I'm not going to phrase this correctly, but someone might be able to pick up on it, that before we take an action from a thought, there's a slight delay of like 3 milliseconds. And I heard this and I was like, that's what they want to hijack. And I think that's the bridge between the subconscious and conscious mind, that if we're doing things but not knowing that we're really doing it, we could do something, be walking through life, but like in a trance, and that there could actually be other beings controlling us. And we do things, pick up something, have a drink, walk down the road, and think that we're doing it for a purpose for us, but really we're just being like played by other beings. And when I was younger, I used to have this I think that these beings do tests on kids. When I was younger, I used to do this thing where there used to be a lamppost about like 10-20 feet ahead of me, and I used to have this thought of, you need to get to that lamppost in like before this next car comes. Like I was kind of having a race, otherwise something really bad would happen. Like to have these thoughts that, like, thinking about it now, I don't think that was me. I think that was other beings trying to hijack my consciousness and trying to trick me into doing something. And if I didn't do it, something really bad would happen. So I'd get to the lamppost before a car and I'd be like, whew. And then I'd have to do it again and I'd run and do it. And thinking about it now, I wasn't 100% in control then, I don't think. And I think that little tests and stuff are done with kids and people. But yeah, I'm just wondering, like, do you guys have any info on what the stag symbolism could be? Because I watched a trailer for this film coming out on July the 18th called Disclosure or something like that, or it's something to do with there being alien disclosure, which I've heard is going to happen in July, possibly July the 4th. But this film is coming out on July the 18th because they always bring out a movie to tie in with what's really going on. But there's lots of stags in the trailer. There's also wallpaper with owls and butterflies. And the hieroglyph of an owl in Egypt, I believe, is the letter M. So seeing this butterfly on this wallpaper of this girl and the owl or the letter M, I can't help thinking MK Ultra. And there's this little red bird as well. So I was thinking it's a red herring. But this stag pops up in that film. It came up in this TV series called Sweet Tooth, where there's this engineer wearing red glasses, and they genetically modify these babies, like hybrids they're called. It's not just that though. So that's a stag. There's also in this series Sweet Tooth this tree which is a stag which gets burnt or something. In Leave the World Behind, the movie created by the Obamas, there was stags in that as well. And because there's a stag in this new film, which is clearly going to be a digamma, a splitting of consciousness, it grabs our attention to change the perception. I'm just wondering what this stag may represent, because it pops up in loads of things. There's so many hybrid programs as well. We have a program called Gen V, which is based on Gen Z, which is about hybrid teenagers as well, which came out last year. There's also there's loads of stuff to do with hybrids come out the last year or two, and I think it's sort of, and these kids always have like powers too, and I think they're trying to indoctrinate kids and teenagers to make them think that if they take some injections and stuff that they'll be able to get powers. They're hijacking the natural process because people are going to start getting powers, start remembering what their power is, and then there'll be a digital or a mechanical aspect to that, as there always is.
Yeah, I think the stag, and I put it on the screen for everybody to be able to appreciate. the stag has always been related to masculinity, a masculine force, and that is quite interesting because it shows a dissidence that we're experiencing in our society at the moment. Obviously, virility is close to that point, and virility is basically about breeding and about sex, and it's about that passion and desire is part of that. It's obviously also represents power, you know, the power that ebbs and flows, returns back to you like the ocean. Oh yeah, it's also in many traditions related to being able to travel between the worlds, right? Because the stag is able to cover long distances. It's a very mobile creature. The reindeer is a kind of a stag, is it not? And, you know, then we've got Father Christmas, Santa Claus riding around in his cute little suit full of his stags pulling him around. So that also represents that. But I think that the important point that for me, whenever I see a stag, I think they're representing the power. They're looking at the power of that creature, right? And the masculine force and virility. And I think they're trying to play that off with the fact that men aren't allowed to be men anymore. We're in a twisted society where masculine force is demonized. If you're a man, you're demonized. It's considered very bad form to have men in politics now, right? All the politicians should be women. Am I right or am I wrong? Everybody keeps talking about how forward thinking it is when there's a woman who's president. I don't know why it should be one or the other, if that makes sense. You know, the best person should get the job. No, not anymore. The best woman should get the job. It's the idea that's being sort of pushed to us. It's not the best person anymore. It's the best woman. And you mentioned the sun. I just want to go back to this as well. I think there's an element with the triple sun element that relates to the connection of the stag with that power pouring out of the sun, that regenerative power and that force of life, which is also the same as an ejaculation, like if we're going to look at it clearly, and how that ejaculation regenerates, you know, energy, and how that can generate another copy of ourselves. So the idea of a seed is also close to the idea of a stag, I believe. It represents the seed potential, which is masculine force, represents the seed potential. But the womb, the feminine, is where all of the work happens, right? That's the heavy digging, that's the soil, that's where the darkness is for the seed to be able to germinate and produce the hybrid, the new life that is produced when the seed is within the feminine. So that's why we speak of a man's seed still to this day. And I think another interesting point is that they're not just trying to demonize masculinity. They're not just trying to demonize man. And I was speaking to my girlfriend about this the other day, and she didn't quite agree. And I was like, well, fair enough. I went to an all-boys school. And in the all-boys school, there was a lot of crap that happened that wasn't cool. But I remember when I was young, we were allowed to have fisticuffs. We weren't allowed to have fisticuffs. No, let me rephrase that. If we had fisticuffs and nobody got badly harmed, we got cuts. And that was the end of the story, right? If we did it all the time and we were constantly then it would be an issue. But there wasn't a saying that boys will be boys when I was young, like back in the 80s and the 90s, you know? And even as a teenager. And as long as we were sensible about how we behaved, it was okay. And I used to get cuts all the time. I never got into fights in school, really, but I used to spar with a guy in my change rooms. Sometimes we would spar. We would spar full contact. So if someone saw us sparring, they would think we were having a fight. But we would go into the change rooms and we would close the doors. We would lock ourselves in there. And we would beat the crap out of each other, like full contact, you know? And we'd get bruises and we'd look beaten up. Well, not for the face, but like when we took off our tops, dude, it was purple everywhere, man. We didn't hold back. And Shelter was a good friend of mine. He was massive. He was like 6'6". So I used to enjoy sparring with him because he had this crazy long reach. And he was also a triathlon athlete. So he was quite fit and quite strong. And We used to get into trouble. We used to get cuts frequently. And they'd say, you guys are fighting. It would be, no, sir, we weren't fighting. They'd be like, look at you. Open up your tops. And we'd open up our tops. And okay, to be fair, he was the one who usually looked worse than me. A lot worse than me. I used to smack him pretty hard. But he was tough. You could take it. And he was the only one who would spar with me full contact, actually. It got to that point. But we used to get cuts. And we used to say, look, we weren't fighting. We were training. And they'd be, this isn't training. Look at the state of you guys. And so these days, if a boy gets into a little rumak with another boy, that's it. Red flag, quickly. Psychologist, medicine, let's get the child medicated. Boys are not allowed to be boys anymore. We're not allowed to be in a boys' club like a fight club, right? We had fight clubs when we were in school. We literally had fight clubs when we were like young. Before the movie came out, we called it Mora. We used to beat the crap out of each other every morning at school, and you had to touch your ears and you had to say a safe word. And in the mornings, everybody was fair game. So, yeah, we would smack each other. I remember smacking my best friend like airborne, lifting him off his feet like meters back against the wall, bouncing off the wall. And we used to hit each other hard because we were all martial artists. So all the fighters in our school used to play this game together, all the hard boys. And we used to get cuts all the time. You wouldn't be allowed to do that these days. There'd be something wrong with you. And okay, it was an all-boys school. It was a top rugby school. It was a very tough jock school. We could get away with it. There were the other schools nearby, like Westerford, which was a co-ed school. The Westerford girls would come to our Sax boys because we'd say that like those guys in Westerford, you could put a dress in them and call them Sophie. Those aren't men. The reason that we used to tease the Westerford guys, the reason all your girls come looking for us because they're looking for real men because you guys are wusses, and so I think co-ed schools was different. Maybe because I went to an all-boys rugby school, we got that. But this is something that's missing. And I think that's a big part of, my girlfriend was like, that's just violence. I was like, yeah, but violence is part of a boy when you're growing up, right? And if you don't get to experience that part of yourself, then you take it out on things, right? They want to become destructive towards things and break things and become aggressive in emotional ways. And boys are not supposed to be emotionally aggressive. Boys are supposed to be physically aggressive at a certain point in their lives. And that way you get to test yourself with your mates. You get a bit hurt, you hurt a bit, and you learn to man up, And then when you're a bit older, you can like relax now because you know what it feels like to get beaten up, right? Because you've been beaten up. And a lot of the boys these days don't know what it feels like to be beaten up. And I think like this looks good on paper, but these are rites of passages that boys are supposed to go through. And so boys are being so emasculated and mollycoddled by their mothers that they don't get that feeling anymore. And so I think there's a big societal issue here with why masculinity is being so repressed, why femininity is being pushed up, and then the women are being told they need to act like men. Which is,
I got the answer.
Yeah,
I've been chomping at the bit on this one because, story of my life also. There has been, this is part of the collective ego of the realm since the fall of Rome. Why? Because the age of Aries had traumatized us with a lot of violence because people of my sign were in charge. People of my values, whether they were good guys or bad guys, whether they had it all together or they were total pieces of shit, people looked at these like initiatory, actionative confidants, and you get your Julius Caesars and whatnot, and all this glory of war and everything else. And so, because we don't understand ourselves very well, the answer when the age of Pisces was just flood it out, just put out the fire. Anger became a sin in and of itself. We took, and like we use the principle of the issue of wrath, and we demonized like the seven. They're not sins. They're fucking. You can call them temptations, you know. But like, there's a lust component involved when mom and dad had love and made you, right? You'd be lying to yourself if there wasn't some carnal yearning that is taboo, makes everybody cringe, but it's going to be just fine between you and your lover when you're 90 years old and you're disgusting anyway, like everybody else will be, right? But anyway, we have an issue where we're not allowed to get angry anymore. You ever saw the movie Equilibrium, which came out around the same time as The Matrix? Dystopian universe. Everybody is drugged to have fucking, you know, to be fucking, everybody's emotionally even, right? You've got the regulation of Neo's mood with the analyst in the fourth Matrix film. He wears the blue glasses when he talks to him. Same fucking difference. There's needs to be a new reconciliation because Aries is the least mature of the signs, but it is also the most optimistic at the same time, but it's also what makes it very destructive, because when an Aries knows that what is coming ahead is good or bad, they're going to flip the fuck out because they're going to be in the front of it. I've been in the front of this. Jeffrey Epstein has been my invisible arch enemy forever with his fucking values and the particular fact that he had so many friends in my backyard. You ask me if that guy looks like he'd survive 5 minutes as a respectable human being in the Roman Empire. Right? We're not allowed to get fucking angry, and it'll be the women, because this is part of a collective agreement in the way women think is part of what they want to see men like. Because they're ultra terrified, especially when we call them out on their bullshit collectively as a gender, which, you know, like, you can see where those agreements happen amongst men and where they are natural agreements versus some real nasty, dehumanizing fucking point that somebody wants to make about a woman, and all the various reasons why those things exist. So, you know, this is Dragon Mother taming her fucking dragon, defanging it, and not thinking that someone else is training a better dragon. And that's what's been done to us. The evil of the women is not understood, because if you've never met a man who is weak as shit, who a woman puts in the power, I mean, like, yeah, and then blame it all on the weak son of a fucking bitch that you wanted to fucking do this way. Because it's all fine for you as long as the world continues to revolve around you. And that's why Madonna fucking goes out there with her fucking fat ass. And, you know, and everybody adores her, nobody says shit. Like the bitch don't want to get off the fucking throne. Her time's fucking up. Oh yeah, Jeffrey Epstein fucking made fun of her as a goy. Made fun of her for fucking doing Kabbalah. I found that out. I found that that's in the emails. Him mocking Madonna for being a Kabbalist because she's not Jewish. And he's fucking right. I actually agreed with him when I found that. Anyway, yeah, so that's what's happened. I'll be right back. I have to tend to my GPS.
Shinobi, brother, did you have anything you wanted to say? Or you sort of...
I definitely do, but I'm just waiting for Ori to...
Okay. Cool, man.
Because, yeah, they just came into the room. Ori was like, we need to use this room now. I was like, all right, can you just give me 5 minutes? And then Ezra came in, and it turns out they don't need this room. It was just Orion being a 7-year-old. So yeah, I've got a few things to add to that. But first off, from the back, I'll just mention people's names usually link with like what they do, as does language and etymology reveal the essence of what's behind it. So this is how we can like read between the lines, so to speak, and enter the liminal spaces. So with Jeffrey Epstein and his building, blue and white stripe with a gold dome on top, looks much like the Argentinian flag, which Israel did want to have as their homeland before. The choice was Palestine or Argentina. They chose Palestine, but it's interesting with this blue and white stripe building with the gold on top, because Ellen DeGeneres, you know, that talk show host who it turns out is a cannibal according to the Epstein files, her name, Ellen DeGeneres, is Ellen Degenerate. You could pronounce it like that. If you read between the lines, DeGeneres, it's Ellen Degenerate. We should start calling her now. Anyway, I don't understand how people didn't notice this, because I saw this a while ago. Perhaps people did, but nothing was really mentioned about it. Is her background for her talk show was Epstein's building. It was Epstein's island. And they've just been showing it in our faces this whole time. So I just wanted to mention that so that when future things happen, we can kind of recognize them. And yeah, just with Bluebeam, and you were talking about sort of like this apathetic, was it like the state of apathy, kind of like a neutral emotion, kind of reminds me of the blue pill in the Matrix, just going back to sleep. So that is like this blue beam, blue screen, blue pilled, asleep, but people thinking they're awake, but really they're just in another dream, sleepwalking through life as a trance human, just stuck in a trance. And this is done via entertainment, bread and circuses. So this stuff enters our minds, holds it, and contains it. And then the ment is the mint as well. Mint and ment are interchangeable. You have the royal mint, which like in the banks where our energy is stored. Like this is where like our energy is extracted and then stuck in the banks. Like water and gold are both current. They both have magical properties, so to speak. And so the ment is the mint, which is the mind. And this brings me back to the Minotaur as well, because if you split the word Minotaur, it's minor, which is a child, and tor, which is the toroidal field, the energy of children. This is the bullhead, which is Moloch, which was worshipped during the age of Aries 6,000 years ago, by fire. Of course, Aries is ruled by fire. And it's still happening today. And in the Bible, like this is why I started looking into all this stuff, is because I wanted to have faith in something. And I was like, how can I have faith in what we're told what God is? It's ridiculous. Like when in the Bible, when it mentions Lord, what's Lord? Jesus isn't Lord. He's not a king. He was a great man who we should all be attaining to be, but he's not the only Son of God. He's not a king. He's not the Lord. Do you know what Lord is? Lord is Baal. Who's Baal? Baal is Moloch. Was Moloch is a bull god. It's a bullhead. This is also Marduk. Worship me before all others. I am the one and only. This is also the demiurge. I was also hypothesized that this is the new age of Horus as well, because much like Marduk slayed Tiamat into 2 pieces, young Horus beheaded Isis and cut Isis, his mother, into 2 pieces. He beheaded her. So this is the same story. And also Horus was created by Isis without the father. They could never find Osiris's phallus. So this is a being created without the father. This reminds me of the story of Sophia creating the demiurge without the father. And this is all playing out now in real time, because we have our current demiurge, or part of this egregore, Elon Musk, Alien Mars, playing out this story of Marduk trying to slay our dragons by this technology. At the same time, NASA launching APEP rockets in 2024 into the ionosphere to try and pierce this barrier. This ties into the eighth sphere as well, because at the same time as these beings trying to get into this realm through us, I think at the same time they're trying to pierce this protective barrier. Some people call it a prison planet, but it's not a prison, it's a womb. And that the barrier around us, the firmament, I think is to keep beings out. It's not just to keep us in here, but to keep beings out. That's what I believe. And I just wanted to mention Lord, Moloch, Baal, Marduk, the Minotaur. It's all the same things. The Minotaur in the labyrinth, that's our mind, and that's how they get our energies, by entering our mind via entertainment and extracting it. And you can see that in the metaphysical and also the material via the dollar bill. Dollar is also the doula. A doula is what helps with a birthing process. There's a birthing process right now which links in with Zervan, cosmic time, giving birth to two twins, one Ahriman, one Ahura Mazda. Ahriman forced his way out of the womb. Ahriman, or the demiurge, or this Marduk, or Elon Musk is trying to force this artificial into this realm, like, which we're not ready for. The artificial, this technology isn't inherently evil, but it's a program, and if it's not being programmed by us, it's being programmed by these this technocracy, then they put their evil into it. So I just wanted to tie all of those threads together of, you know, the story of the demiurge, this current energy now, this worship me before all others, this kind of wedge that this technology has put between us and God, or source, or whatever that is for you, the higher self, our potential. There's a wedge put there, which is the same as Akhenaten and the story of him wedging himself between the sun and us getting to give our energy to him rather than the sun. So yeah, lots of stuff are thrown out there, but it weaves together, I believe.
I think there's an interesting perspective there, you know, that you're bringing up, and I think it leads right back to how old and how long this thing. Okay, so the blue beam. I want us to consider the blue bloods for a moment. We're dealing with blue light, blue beam, but in the old times we were dealing with the blue bloods, and the blue bloods were lording over us. They were the lords and the ma'ams, the queens, have you. So a lord is somebody who is in charge, and they make the decisions effectively. And it's interesting, you know, Marduk, I just want to point out something just from a contextual perspective, which I think is important. Marduk tried to usurp the roles of Enlil, Enki, and Anu. He tried to usurp all of their roles. This was later on. And so the heritage of Marduk, which was Akkadian, and we've got to realize that Akkadian heritage was after Marduk. Sumerian heritage was up until, during, and before Marduk. Really important to realize this, because Marduk wasn't always on Earth. He came at a later stage. So the Baal, Belu, was it Belu? Is it Belu? Let me check quickly. I believe it's Belu. in Sumerian, Balu, which we know as Baal, is a title that was reserved for any of the deities. But we're calling them deities because this is how it's been presented in the Akkadian writings. But in the Sumerian writings, it's presented differently. In the Sumerian writings, they're not quite deified in the same way. They're much more human in their context. It was Marduk that wanted to become the sun god, and so he supplanted everybody else. But in the previous, they are considered as the supreme commander and the supreme lord of earth, and that was first Enki and then Enlil. So both Enki, Enlil, and Anu were all Baal, because Baal is a title, right? This is not actually a name, it's a title. And Marduk then forced all of the writings and all of the information about the predecessors to be destroyed, and he wanted to be the only one. And then later on, he was known as Re, right? So that this is what my research has shown, that at a later epoch, we spoke about Baal as Re. And also, these beings lived for a really long time. So they didn't live short lives like us. They lived thousands and thousands of years. So they lived across different generational phases, different epochs, if you will. They had their feet in one epoch, their head in another epoch, and their body stretched an epoch, effectively. But getting it back to this idea that the blue bloods are then the ancestors of those that were mixed with those original lords. This is why we call them lords. And so the original proto blue beam was the blue blood, right? And the blue blood managed humanity for the eighth sphere, the Qlippoth and the Dwarth, and for the beings that were preying on humanity. And so this was why the lords would have contests and would torture people and would hang people. You know, London, what was London Bridge, right? London Bridge used to be a hanging tower for people. People's heads and bodies used to hang from the bridge. And it was a sign for people to know that when you enter this place, you fear the lords. Look at what the lords did to that bloke. He didn't behave. Look at his body hanging up there. So I think like the instrument of fear has always been used by the blue bloods. And now they have taken the technology to another level, and they are using blue light, and they are using more modern forms of radio frequencies to influence us. Although who knows that there were not radio frequencies in the old time. I would not be surprised if they were using it back then. And so they've always been wanting us to worship outside of ourselves. And obviously this religion, you know, the Muslim, even the Buddhist religion, people don't realize it, right? People worship Buddha. You're not supposed to worship Buddha. People worship Emmanuel, Christos. You're not supposed to worship him. People worship, all of the prophets that have come in the old times, and those highly advanced beings that have come to teach us wisdom, it gets weaponized by the blue bloods. So the blue bloods have been twisting and weaponizing our spiritual convictions, our spiritual teachings, our knowledge, turning it into a weapon that they can use to manipulate people and cajole people into small little groups, and totally brainwash that group, and then slowly but surely add more to the group. And then once they have a certain number of people in the group, they make it legislative that you now have to be in this group. And if you're not in this group, well, then you're going to get it tough. You'll be one of those guys hanging from London Bridge. And so the domination of fear has been used throughout our religious backgrounds, as well as our, the courts. And it was this was why the dukes and the lords decided to start educating us, right? They wanted us to be educated. They wanted us to learn their laws in their places so that they could control us. And when we didn't do what they told us to do, they had a system of court. We had to go to court. We had to get representation. We had to represent ourselves in their courts. And they would then sit up on a high chair wearing all black as the master Saturn of time, and they would put on a wig, right, a big wig, and that would be representative of that they are now going into character of a deity, and they would pass judgment onto us. So I think this is not a new thing, and I think it sort of ties on to what you're saying quite nicely about the lords. We've always been lorded over since the beginning of time. So Sumerians were lording over us to get their gold. And then Marduk said, well, I'm going to turn myself into more than a lord. I think Marduk was the point where the lords decided that they would be deity, right? Up until then, they weren't deity. Hey, namaste, Zerilat. I hope your drive is sweet and peaceful. I hope your day in work goes well. So I think, like, you know, they were first lording over us as advanced beings. And then one of them decided, well, we've dumbed these guys down enough. Let me turn into God. And God with a capital G. And that's what Marduk did. And supplanted everybody else, rewrote the history. You see, rewrote the history. This is what they keep doing to us. The handbook that Marduk had, they're just refreshing that. And then at a later stage, Marduk was known in another name. And, you know, we've got all this repetitions of the same archetypal symbolism and information. And all these pantheons were created in order to confuse us so that we didn't know who we were talking about, so that we start thinking of it in terms of symbolism and symbolic. I think this was not an accident, right? They had to have people under one banner. And when people started seeing through the lie of that, they'd say, oh, no, it's not this, it's this, it's different, but it's the same thing. And then when we see through that lie, they go, no, you're right, that was wrong. This is the right one. And they've just been doing this with humanity as far as back as we can go. And we look at all these different versions that they've offered us the same thing, selling us the same Kool-Aid under a different label, in a different bottle, telling us it's a different drink. And people, you know, I think this is something we're suffering in marketing as well at the moment.
Yeah, absolutely. In my story, there's these two factions, which is one is the eye, which is this kind of all-seeing eye technology, this blue kind of light. But after the eye is kind of exposed, it's really the hand which has been controlling it, like the puppet masters, the sorcerers. It's not the actual eye itself. It's not the technology. It's the people behind it. But they want you to think it's the technology and not look beyond who's actually programming it. And yeah, I'd like to talk about monatomic gold and the dayat and deity, and the etymology of that, with like to die and death, and how that relates to dayat and data and deities as well. But yeah, you mentioned the blue bloods, which is interesting. It's like with blue light, the blue light seems to like drain us, make us tired. So it kind of, the polarity is it extracting the red, which is the iron of our blood, or our energy, our ions. And when you mentioned worship, I was thinking of, instead of it being worshipping these beings like Emmanuel or Buddha, people should be aware of their ship, and the ship is an arc or a story or a store of energy. So people need to, rather than worshipping, just be aware of their ship, aware of that, the vessel that was carrying that energy or the story. But people don't really look at the story. They just look at more of the narrator and not the core. So they're like, I'm a Christian, I believe in Christ. What is Christ to you? How are you a Christian? Oh, I go to church. Right, okay. And that's the downfall of society. And what I see happening with our false history, which I view as a grid, is that it's the source error. The sorcerers have created an error of us and source, so we don't know our history. And then I view this as a square or a grid containing energy. And this sorcerer is the polar opposite to the philosophy, which is philosophy, which is a sphere, Sophia, which is nature. So this is the yin and yang. This is the duality between this kind of mechanistic, kind of mechanical, artificial, and this nature, which is this source, these sorcerers versus the philosophers. And there seem to be sorcerers governing us and not enough people interested in their inherent nature, which is wisdom and philosophy. So yeah, I think we could uncover some interesting stuff by looking at the etymology of the Dayat and death. 'Cause I don't know too much about Dayat. I saw it spelled Dayath, like, and I thought, oh, death, oh, interesting. And then it's an anagram of data as well. And then I've also read some stuff online which you can never be too sure about, but it's to do about knowledge and wisdom. But then you mentioned the 8th sphere as well. So I think all of these things are linked with deity, Dayat, data, die, and death. I think they're all linked, but I'm not really too sure about what Dayat is. So should we get onto that?
Okay, yeah. So it's I believe in English we have words like Deuteronomy. There's a French version of the word Darth. There is a connection with not being alive. In the Kabbalah, we have the Sefirot, right? And there are the 10 Sefirot. And they're very clear that there are 10 Sefirot, not 9, not 11. Now, in New Age Kabbalah, right, like the youngsters have redesigned the Kabbalah, they try and make it with 11 spheres. And they want to give Dart its own sphere. It was very clearly not a sphere, but it's a quasi-sphere. So you've got these different levels of being. And according to the cosmology, okay, I'll try and keep this as brief as possible. According to the cosmologies, there was a fall. And when the Watchers, they took human form and they become degraded morally, spiritually, ethically, there was a fall from grace, and there was a disconnection between the proverbial inner heavens and the earth, right? And that bridge that was proverbially burnt or broken created an abyss. And that abyss was a necessary boundary because it was used to create a prison that we read about in various different texts. You know, it's in the Bible, it's in various different apocryphal texts. We'll see it in various different books of the giants and such and so forth. It's even in the book of Enoch. I think it must be mentioned. I know it's definitely mentioned in a lot of the others. Regardless, this discontinuity was created as a result of this proverbial fall, and Darth became a placeholder on the tree of life for where there is non-being and non-life, the forces of non-life. And so it's got a shadowy connection with the triple goddess, but specifically the third element of the triple goddess, the crone, where primarily the forces of life and the forces of purity, which is the mother, were the divine feminine. And when this fall came, the crone came into being. And this has got to do with aging, right? Before, there was youthfulness and maturity. And there wasn't people passing away from not being alive. Then there was the fall from grace, and there came death to human beings. At that point, we had to go through childbirth, and we had to die, and physical forms and aging, and Saturn ruled over us. But there was a time in the golden age when this was not the case. There was merely you were young and you became mature, and you lived on and on and on and on and on. Then this fall came, And from this fall came the third aspect into materialization, which is Darth, which represents the form of the crone, which represents old age and people getting closer back down to fall back into the underworld. And the cycles of the moon started to dominate Earth. Prior to that, the Earth was not dominated by the cycles of the moon in the way that the moon represents the birth and death. Life and death are the key words to the sphere of the moon. So Darth thus represents that the abyss. It represents the passage that leads to antimatter. It represents the sphere that leads into the kingdom of the Qlippoth in the Kabbalah. And within the Steiner schools of thought, they speak about the eighth sphere. And the eighth sphere is what you'll hear about in other documents where Shamyaza and his, the war of Shamyaza, where they were cast down and beaten. In some stories, it's Raphael, Auriel, Gabriel, Michael. In other stories, it's other beings, divine beings that come and fight against these evil giants and Nephilim masters to end the conquest of humanity at the hands of the giants on earth and cast them down into the earth. For the earth is rendered open, and they were cast into the earth, and the grave was made for them, where they would be trapped for 1,000 years. This is the ancient story. So Darth thus becomes this division from the spiritual, from the physical, why they would, a boundary was created between the two, and that boundary was a void, and that void is an abyss, and that is Darth. So Darth thus represents the beginnings of death. And it is conceived that when the Neshama becomes fully absorbed into our consciousness fields, that we will once again become one. And at that point, the tree will collapse into a trinity, into its polarity, without the requirement for all these different phases that work independently of each other. There will be a synergy where there will be the spiritual, the physical, and the movement between the physical and the spiritual, as opposed to now we have to have all these different gloves that we put on, and each glove represents a different aspect of the onion. And between each of those different bodies or layers, there's a layer of Darth, there's a layer of void, there's a layer of this negative existence. So we can think of Darth as being, if we're going to term it in terms of physics, antimatter or negative existence, and it leads into the eighth sphere. And this is why in the occult and the practices, the abyss is something not to be trifled with, because it's almost like an exhaust pipe for the universe. For the universe is churning, producing new life, and it's crunching the old life under the wheels of the Ophanim. And that crunching of this old life becomes fractured and denatured, and thus has to be recycled to become once again the beginnings of life. And humans, we're not of this world. We come from the spiritual domain, and so we have it within us the potential to transcend this Darth, this life, this death. And so it doesn't represent death specifically, but it represents the beginnings of death, if that makes sense. Like on a epistemological level.
Well, death, it depends how, like, the definition of death, because to die is the beginning, it's not the end. The inversion is we're told to die is the end, but it's really the beginning. If you look at the etymology of the word die, in Chinese it's a butterfly emerging from a cocoon or chrysalis. Die or day in Latin are the same. You have Deus, which is God as well. So I think that when you were saying all of that, apart from the eighth sphere, I couldn't help but see the positives of the Dayat. I understand it's maybe like negative, I guess, but to be honest with you, like the negative, the underworld, the crone, like all of this, and you mentioned like Saturn as well, the abyss. I can't help but view all of this as positive, because this dayat, or this death, which I'm just starting to learn about, is you say the 99%, the antimatter. Matter is just 1%, right? The 99 is the rest of all there is, and that's all energy or data we can bring into matter. So I can't help but view this as more of a positive, see the positive side of this rather than the negative. And because the whole story of us being like cast down into matter, into the material, it's like people say it's a prison, it's a trap, we've dropped the fall, but I think it's a place for us to grow. Like we only come in here as part of ourselves. We have to find lost fragments of who we are, but that's to refine who we are. And if you look at it as if we were just constantly just alive, just living, just existing, and we didn't have that, if we weren't born and we didn't have that death, our perception of time would be completely different and time would become irrelevant. But I think we're moving through time. People see time as negative, but I see it as very positive, because it's like, oh, do you remember that time? Did you have a good time? Time just allows us to view reality at a slower pace. And I can't help but see this dayat as positive. There are two of a moon, there are two heavens and two hells. Yeah. I mean, the Saturn moon matrix is quite interesting, because apparently the moon is kind of a reflection of the Earth, but the all of the Earth, like beyond the ice wall. And I was thinking recently as well, I had this kind of theory that perhaps this story of a cataclysm and the ark, which is just a vessel or a container, and this black cube, which now we have black cubes which hold data, that perhaps I'm still trying to work this out, but perhaps we're on the moon, and this is all a light projection, because it seems that way, that we're on the moon and this is all a light projection, and that basically there was a cataclysm and our essence was put into this black cube or container or vessel that contained the data of everything we are. But this data, this vessel, is just projected here and projected from the moon, because the moon ties into our subconscious, and that we are only part of our true essence or true self. And by going into the subconscious, we can connect more to of what we originally were. But because of this cataclysm that happened due to corruption of our spirit or whatever happened, that we come in here as part of ourselves, and this is a growth journey. And when we grow and connect with more of our soul, our core, and our subconscious, we expand, and then we leave this realm, and that's a process of being born and to die. But this place here that people call a program, matrix, whatever, matrix in the negative, instead of it just being a womb, it's being corrupted, and we know that. It's being corrupted in the past, it's being corrupted now, and that this is a place for us to come into and grow spiritually. But there are beings that are in here, stuck in this realm, in this place, and that they can't leave this realm until they've grown spiritually, but they don't want to. That's why they're trying to hijack us and try and latch themselves into us. So that's just a theory I've been working on, but it kind of ties in with this Saturn moon matrix grid, because I view it as not negative. It's a journey, place to grow, but it's being corrupted, and we've spoken about that before.
Yeah, brother. It isn't negative. This is really interesting when we consider it from our perspectives here. This has been weaponized against us, so we're sort of stuck in this negative positive paradigm. But I think how it's presented was that in the ancient times, human beings just lived. They didn't die. And when they chose, they just transformed their body into pure energy and went to higher realms of being. With no forgetfulness, with no need for reincarnation, no way to be trapped into this world through patterns and cycles. And then when this happened, this oblivion came into being. And Lethe, as she was known, would force people to drink from the river of forgetfulness, right? Which was one of the 5 rivers. Yeah. And this forced forgetfulness was necessary for people to forget the suffering of Saturn. This is why Saturn and time, so like you're saying, when time came into being, life became toil and suffering because of time's mechanisms and old age and all of this, and we would suffer. And but there was a time in a golden age, and the Vedas sort of also points us out, where humans didn't have to forget. So we were just in a state of continuity of life, and we would just choose to enlighten ourselves and become a light body, right? We would literally absorb all the matter into our consciousness and become a pure being of consciousness that would flow into the next paradigm seamlessly without any forgetfulness. And I think this forgetfulness is what they're focusing on here, and why it's been characterized as negative is because of that forgetfulness. We can get stuck perpetuating the same pattern again, life after life after life. And so, it was supposed to protect us from our suffering. But there is a question in this, is this, she was the daughter of Eris, strife, and she was associated with drowsiness and the removal of memories.
Is Eris also to do with a discord as well? Because I remember there was was it? There was a variant called Eris 2 days before the attacks in Israel. And Eris, these variants are just time variants. That's how they shift consciousness. All these names, Eris, 2 days later, discord. No coincidence there.
Yes, and you're completely right. This is why they use these names, Eris. And that's where we get the word to err is human, right? And this Eris is about discord. So because of this forgetfulness, we keep making the same mistakes. We come back to this world, we live our life, we try and avoid the suffering trap. And by trying to avoid the suffering trap, we create the suffering for ourselves, make the same mistake, and perpetually do the same cycles. And then we get taken out, we get forced to forget again, and we keep coming back again and again and again and doing the same mission over and over again. As we're like stuck records. Very often that is very much a part of what we're experiencing. So I think that whole connection has got to do with the da'at, which has got to do with the voiding of our consciousness and our consciousness being lost to us. And where Buddha, for example, if we look at the cosmology behind Buddhahood is where one becomes consciously aware of the full universe, and one just consciously moves beyond the flesh, right? And in Vedic cosmology, we call this samadhi. And so the samadhi is the highest form of samadhi is to literally turn the physical body into energy and transcend with all full consciousness, memory of every moment.
Did you say somebody, or did you say a different name?
Samadhi.
It sounds like somebody. That's what it is to become somebody.
Somebody, samadhi. Yes, yeah.
Samadhi.
That's interesting, isn't it? Samadhi. But yeah, that is interesting. So I think like we've characterized this as bad because of the forgetfulness. And because of the forgetfulness, like if you forget the mistakes you made in your last life, you're more likely to remake the same mistakes. And so the whole way to get out of this trap, this is ironic. A big part of transcending the trap of matter, and let's not pretend that Saturn isn't a trap, right? In a sense, time and the cycles that of the moon cycles, because it's the moon Saturn matrix. So the moon regulates the cycles, and Saturn holds the frame of time, and this is the way that time moves through the cycles of the moon. That's why we call it the moon Saturn matrix, because it's got to do with time, and the cycles represent death and birth, death and birth, death and birth, running through the matrix of time. And so in a sense there is this discord that we sow, and when we start to recognize our own pain, right? This is called, from a shamanic tradition, when I'm doing this work, I call it soul retrieval. Yeah. And the soul retrieval is about recognizing the parts of ourselves that we have allowed to fall into forgetfulness in order to re-embrace the fullness of who we are and reach into a state of coherency within our consciousness field. And that brings us to a full awakening of our pasts and our future. And in that state of awakening, where we're more able to recognize the errors that we've made, both in this physical life and in the previous lives. And by recognizing the errors that we've made, we start to recognize the patterns and cycles that we've been trapped in, and how time has elusively got us in its trap, and start to move towards getting into a higher state of awareness, so that we're able to transcend the patterns of error, of errors, right? Effectively, and enter into a conscious co-creation within the structure of reality, and find a level of being that is not contradicting the forces of life, that is not as this, what's this thing I've got here, that is not causing us to make the same errors and causing us to get stuck in the daughter of Eris's forgetfulness. And so this is why we say that self-awakening or self-remembering is the opposite of Eris. And so to become fully spiritually awakened, we need to remember everything that we've been forced to forget. And that forced forgetfulness is the enemy. And that enemy is why we're stuck. It's but at the same time, you're right. We shouldn't be afraid of the die, because the die is the shape of the cube. And that shape of the cube is Saturn's instrument. And Saturn's instrument of time, it keeps us bound in this dimensional pattern. If you consider what a cube is, right? A cube's got 7 directions, 6 outward directions, 1 central direction. And those 7 directions are bound. This gets very, very interesting. Those 7 directions, right, which have 7 faces, right? 6 outward faces and 1 inward face. Saturn is the inward face from a traditional Hermetic Kabbalistic perspective. And, the other 6 outward faces would correspond to the tarot card of the sun in the east, the tarot card of the wheel in the west, the tarot card of the tarot card of the sun in the south. Sorry, my mistake. And the tarot card of the Empress in the east, and the tarot card of the Emperor in the north, and the tarot card of the Magician above us, and the tarot card of the High Priestess below us, and the tarot card of the final card, the World, at our hearts, right? That's the compression of time. That's that time dilation and the compression that brings us into physicality, which is why time is compressed into such small little blocks, which is why we live such small, fast, insignificant lives in the bigger picture of time. And these 7 different principles are bound through the 6 outer principles by 12 principles, right? So there are now 12 different tarot cards that act as a binding force. Like, just as an example, if you want to look at it, if you're facing the east, you would have bound on your left and your right and below you, right? And on your left you would have sorry, I said the emperor would be on your left binding it, and it would be the tower that is facing facing the south, just to be clear. That's Mars, not Aries. I must remember this. The tower is facing, and the emperor would be the binding that connects the empress of the east to the tower of the north, for example, right? And that empress sits as a boundary between those 2 faces. And then you would have the Hierophant on the right-hand side of the east as a binding between the empress of the east and the sun tarot card of the south. And so all the way around you would have these, in the same way that above you would have the Lovers as a connection between the east and the Magician. So if you look at it, you can see that there's 12 different parts of a cube where there's a connection between the faces, and that 12 represents a macrocosm, and then the 7 represents a microcosm, which is the structure of the cube itself. And then the structure of the cube has got 3-dimensional phases, and those 3-dimensional phases represent the 3 elemental states: fire, air, and water. So basically you've got the structure of the cube, which is the major arcana. The major arcana is the cube, and that is also the path back towards reconciliation of the different parts of ourselves with the divine, and gaining an insight into liberation and awakening. But so yeah, the cube is fundamentally what keeps us trapped in the physical domain, forcing us to forget that we are hyperdimensional, extra-dimensional beings that are multidimensional and stretch across space and time in the most incredible way. And that sort of dart is that boundary that keeps us locked in here, forgetting our true potential. I hope that makes sense. Trying not to get too deep into it.
Yeah, man, thank you for that. Yeah, I've been writing notes as you were talking, and yeah, that's really, really interesting. Sorry, Ori just came in and was sort of blew my ship off course there. Did you say there were 12 sides to the cube? Did you relate the cube to 12?
There are 6 sides. There is one internal side as well, which faces towards the internal, the center. So the center is considered as a side. And then there are 6 sides facing outwards. And then there are 12 connection points between them. Right? So if you imagine a cube, if you're looking in one direction, right? You got a face, and then you got 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, right? And if you look behind you, you got 1, 2, 3, 4, right? And then if you look to your right, you got 1, 2, 3, 4, and you look to your left, you got 1, 2, 3, 4. And what do you get when you take all 3 1, 2, 3, 4s? That's 4 times 3. That's 12, and that is what constructs the cube.
Well, because of course we have 12 hours. Well, on a clock, there's 12 and 12 signs of the zodiac. But I was kind of I was just trying to see if there was a number 13 anywhere, the hidden 13 sort of perhaps being contained by this 12. Because I've heard Sophia was the 13th aeon, and 13 would relate to water and and memory being kind of contained in this cube. But I just want to go through some of my notes and see what you think. So with Saturn, so we have to go back to this Lethe and this river of forgetfulness. And are we perhaps tricked into drinking this to forget our trauma? For there's so much done to us during life that when we die, are we kind of tricked into thinking, just drink from this water and you'll forget? And then that's how this is why it's important to die while you're alive. This is why it's important to connect with the subconscious, travel across the river Styx along these mines, using Chiron, not Charon, Chiron the wounded healer, very similar to Charon. Also Anubis, who would be Saint Christopher, Christ Topher, the Christ bearer, the one that carried Christ across the river. Anubis is so Anubis and Saint Christopher are both dog heads, or godheads, and Anubis is the one that weighs the heart and the feather. We can do this while we're alive because no one else can judge us apart from ourselves, and it's up to us to take judgment on our actions and to be aware, and not just claim to be conscious, but tap into the subconscious mind and sort of overcome our traumas before we die, because then if we do die, we'll be tricked into drinking this water and then have to come back here. So really the power is within us. And with Saturn is associated with the metal lead. And then you mentioned a golden age. And then there's this alchemy of turning lead into gold. And I can't help but think that this is just shifting our perception of how we view time and boundaries, and perhaps changing Saturn from being lead and weighing us down, instead turning it into gold and using this current of gold or water, which is strongly associated with Saturn, and using this current to sort of not transcend, but bring the 5D into the 3D, using time, the 4D. And what I mean by this is that if we look at the Greeks having two words for time, chronos, linear time, and kairos, flow time. Kairos is a more kind of mercurial messenger of the gods, which is water. And if you look at the North Pole of Saturn, it's the hex. Oh, the hex, the cube. This is being demonized. Saturn is Satan. But really, time is just our perception of this reality. And where our attention goes, our energy flows, and our attention creates our perception. If our attention is going on that, oh, it's Satan, it's this prison, that is what it will become. But if we look at the North Pole, magnetic north of Saturn, it has a hexagram, which is linked to as above, so below, and also structured water or four-phase water, which is plasma, which is what coats our DNA. And then if we connect to this water, that's how we step into our light codes, our DNA, and we can, I don't want to say ascend our frequency, but step into the frequency of our soul, because it's not about ascending, it's more about creating a bridge so that our essence can flow through us like water, like time. 1 minute, Ori. So there's different, can you shut the door, please? I'll talk to you in a minute. So there's different ways of perceiving this Saturn moon matrix, and there's been a huge PSYOP to suppress anything to do with water, magic, the feminine, and I think that's how we create this bridge. Like Saint Christopher carried the Christ or the Christos across the waters, that's what we must do. We must cross the waters and not be afraid of crossing these waters while we're alive. The Death card, Tarot, number 13, relating to water, memory. 1 of 3 is 4, which is the force, which is thoughts, which is all around us, which is water. And Saturn has 274 moons, supposedly. 2 add 7 of 4 is 13. So you have 13 moons or 13 months, 13 moons. We used to have a 13-month calendar. Now we have a 12-month calendar. Remember, 12 is on the clock. 12 relates to the cube. So if we sort of step outside of this cube, dissolve the cube, and understand what this 13 memory, the actual cycles of time should be, then our perception of reality changes, because there's so much done to contain us, you know, like a cube does. A cube contains energy. And Orion, please can you shut the door? So with the words time, it can either be tie me, or if you rearrange the words, it's emit. So time can either contain us, or it can allow us to emit. And when I say emit, I mean once our perception of time is changed and we start tapping into this Kairos opportune moment, central pillar point of time. If you look at the Axis Mundi, swastika, that's demonized because it's vortex energy. If you look at the hexagram being used by Israel now, that's the heart chakra. That's a vortex. This as above, so below is vortex energy. The vortex is a central point and it spins. They want us away from our center, and they do this by the north, east, south, west of the news, ripping us in all directions. And the news is a noose. And I wrote some words about that about the news being a noose and a massive PSYOP sucking the life force out of us, which before we leave today, I'll share that. But yeah, also water, I guess, is a boundary as well, because we have the firmament, which is a more dense layer of water. We have water all around us. There's water inside the earth, which is more dense. And we have the ice cap, the ice caps, which is, you know, a barrier between us and the lands beyond. And we've been made to fear this water. We've been made to fear the firmament. We've been made to fear going into the depths of the water, or the abyss, or the unknown, or the subconscious. We've been made to fear the ice caps melting. But these are just barriers. And once we have the knowledge to know that there is a ledge, to know the ledge, it's up to us with our intuition, which is this watery energy, which it is a boundary, but it goes beyond any boundaries. It's like the water is everywhere, up there in space, in us, out of us. Water is how our light travels interdimensionally, and this is why they're using water for data centers, and they'll be using it for quantum computing as well. But I just wanted to put that out there, because this I can't help but thinking that obviously, yeah, Dayat is not necessarily negative. It's negative for beings, and it can be seen as negative. But once we, like, say for example, our bodies contain our life force or our soul, people can view the body as negative because they just want to expand and leave and transcend this realm. And that's like the 3D to 5D, this sort of I guess that kind of that escapism. But I like to reverse things. I like to kind of like do a bit of alchemy, dissolve it, and then rebuild with my imagination, and be like, okay, instead of it being 3D to 5D and us transcending, let's bring the 5D into the 3D, so matter becomes less dense like it used to be. And we do that by using the 4D time, Saturn, as a bridge. And that this bridge isn't just it's not a barrier. This bridge is A bridge is in music. You have a bridge as well. A bridge is a frequency, and we can tap into that frequency of Saturn, not this lower frequency or whatever they want us to step inside, using this Project Bluebeam to project fear of Saturn so that the powers that be can use this energy of this god, which is this guardian of dimensions, the fourth dimension, because that's what they're doing. They're using this very powerful energy, and people aren't, because people have become afraid of it. Like they've become afraid of dragons. They've become afraid of their own internal dragon. And therefore, that's how they take our energy, our life forces, by disconnecting us from gods. And they did this. They managed to disconnect us from God via this blue beam, via magnetism, via this magic. But so that all links together. So yeah, also just one more thing. Some of Saturn's moons are named after nymphs, like Calypso, Telesto. Many of them are nymphs. And what is a nymph? A nymph is related to fresh water. What is fresh water? Fresh water is spring water. It's fresh energy. It's imagination. It's spring water, structured water too. It's this hex. That's what atomically what it looks like, a hex. So this hex relating to the magnetic north of Saturn is this watery, fresh energy. And I believe that there's a reason it's being used by people in Israel today. Like this other vortex was used by the Nazis back in the day, because this is very powerful vortex energy that we can all use. But unfortunately, these symbols and language and myths of all planets, whatever, have all been used they've been hijacked and demonized. And that's the inversion, because they stop us using it, and then the powers that be use these energies for themselves. That's why they're sorcerers.
Yeah, that's very interesting. And you mentioned the alchemy of gold and lead, and this ties into water and gold. Interestingly enough, it's a hermetic notion that all things are essentially the same thing, but operating in a different way, on a different frequency, with a different vibrational field. So the idea is that the entire periodic table is just one thing, and that from that monad, that one thing, springs the multiplicity. And the multiplicity is different vibrational fields of the same thing. So what that means is that water is something else. This is how the field of correspondence comes into being. Why there is a correspondence between water and life, right? Why there is a correspondence between gold, right, and the action of life that releases the energy of life. So you could think of sunlight. Here's a thought. So these notions are that sunlight is one particular frequency, right? But if you can slow that frequency of sunlight down and keep slowing it down, it'll become gold, right? But sunlight is a different frequency to thought. And if you could slow down the frequency of thought to get to a particular pitch and harmonic, it would be sunlight. And water is a particular frequency and pitch harmonically, but it is also life, the very principle of life, which is thought, which embodies life, is water. That's why we can reflect. And that's why the idea of reflection is the idea of thinking, and that is water. I see you. Diggy, diggy, diggy in the background there. Hey, we can see you, bro. Hello. So the idea of...
They're off out in 2 minutes. So yeah, I'm not sure how much time you... No, they're off out in 2 minutes. I'm not sure how much time you have today, but...
I've got to go as well quite soon.
I'll have you. Okay.
Yeah, brother. So just the idea that water is a different frequency of thought. And the prana and gold are a different frequency, but they're also connected to water. This is why like life is coming out of water. And so lead and gold are different harmonic pitches and frequencies of the same thing. So the idea is that within your consciousness, you can change and transmute your consciousness from one element to another element within your consciousness. And so the metaphor stands true as a symbolism, but it's the symbolism is also physical. What a thought. So the symbolic ideas that we have, this is the nature of reality. Reality is a symbolic construction, but the symbolic construction is, and here's the key, symbolic, symbols, right? Like, what is a symbol? Symbol, symbolic, vibration, pitch, harmonic, sound. So these frequencies of sound being changed produces different reactions, and those reactions we call different grades of matter. So the idea of actually producing gold out of lead from the ancient alchemist perspective was the test for monatomic gold when it was correctly made. And the monatomic gold was correctly made because it would be eaten. But it wouldn't just be eaten. Monatomic gold can change the gravitational field of things. It can take something very, let's say you want to build a pyramid and you want to be able to levitate these big chunks of rock, right? How do you do that? Well, monatomic gold would be how you would change the mass. You would get like a 100-ton chunk of rock and you would say to your like 3-year-old, would you move that rock to over there? And the 3-year-old would just gently push the rock and you'd have your little kid like moving the 100-ton piece of rock like 20 yards, and it would be playing with it like it's a kite or like a thing, on a string balloon. So this monatomic gold, this almost can do this, but it can also be ingested into the human system, and monatomic fibers of gold can become embedded within our DNA, right? And then when it becomes embedded in our DNA, the DNA doesn't wear out. The cells don't pass away. So the cells can last long. So you could eat this ormus and extend your physical life to thousands of years, because your cells get born, they pass away, they get born, they pass away. But you would be arresting that process if you had monatomic gold in your body, because there would be no reason for the cells to degrade. What a thought. So the eating of this ormus was a big part of the ritual, and we call it the manna from heaven. There were times when it would fall out of the sky, and this manna from heaven was manufactured alchemically. However, it's also related to the Holy Grail. If you made it wrong, it would stop you from being alive. So the only way that you could test that this was the true manna, that you had manufactured correctly, your ormus, your monatomic gold, was if you had it and you did a certain process with lead, the lead would become gold, because that ormus was able to change the molecular frequency and the atomic frequency of lead so that it became gold. So this alchemy goes into the psychological, psycho-spiritual, internal alchemy, but it's an output. This is why magic exists, why we can change the physical world with our alchemy and produce magical spells that can also change things, is because of this field of consciousness, and that everything is made out of consciousness. This is something that I've been saying for a long time, and I don't think people grasp it. Like, this is consciousness, this is consciousness, this is consciousness, these thoughts are consciousness, these feelings are consciousness, and it's just consciousness slowed down to a different frequency of harmonic pitch. And so it now becomes a solid chunk of consciousness, and it seems separate from the rest in this field of consciousness. But effectively, this is like the hermetic idea behind the alchemical transformation of metals, as well as the internal transformation. And in order to be able to do the physical transformations, one has to be able to reach a high degree of internal transformation. And once that internal level of transformation is high enough, one would then be able to use the physical gold to generate ormus in order to inject it into one's body or eat it, and thus produce the potential for much longer life without the loss of memory in that river, right? And without the loss of memory, one would be able to gain an exceedingly large amount of knowledge and wisdom, and one would live for thousands of years. So anyway, those are a couple of ideas. I'm going to not say anything else. I'm going to let you tell us what your last thoughts are, your last ideas. Clear your mind happily. Don't rush yourself. What else would you like to share, brother?
Yeah, next time I think we should go or start off with monatomic gold, because I've got lots of stuff written down from this previous week about that. One of the things being adrenochrome seems to be a poor man's monatomic gold. Ori, please can you go away? I've told him I'm going to be done in 2 minutes.
5 minutes.
5 minutes, yeah, sure. Thanks for correcting me. So yeah, Ori's really good at the Diablo. He's been playing with the Diablo, which is interesting because the Diablo it looks like an hourglass. And can you go away? Because I'm going to be finished in 2 minutes. Otherwise, I'm going to be longer, aren't I? Thank you. The Diablo is it I think Spanish for devil, the Diablo, and then the devil's linked to Saturn, and then you have the hourglass of the Diablo as well, where you kind of like you use these strings to basically move this hourglass of time. So I think that's a really cool instrument he's playing. He's an Aquarius too, so ruled by Saturn, so it seems fitting that he's really into his Diablo. So yeah, I think that next time we can start off talking about monatomic gold and what and a bit more of what that is and how I believe that links into adrenochrome as well. I'm just trying to find these notes that I wrote down yesterday. Oh, here we go. 1 second. Yeah, so sometimes when I hear words that play around with it, as you know, so news sounds a lot like noose. So then that just led me on a journey which I wrote down. So I'll just share that with you now. So news is a noose, slowly suffocating us, taking all the air, a PSYOP, pounds per square inch of oxygen, northeast, west, and south, pulls us in all directions away from our center. It's now being revealed that all news networks are pretty much centralized. That central eye is the top of the pyramid. The only way to combat this is to become centralized ourselves. This means to be centered, grounded at a core level, not to be identified by what's happening outside in this cult or that, whether the mainstream grabs our attention and leads our perception at the time, but understand the occult, the hidden eye, the central tower within, which is our power. T and P can be interchanged, of course. So our lighthouse, if you like, which is the tower within, and so the tower is there within, but the flame is just an ember. Our light has been disorientated. We've been living in the shadow of another's flame. Our light has either been extinguished by empathy, which has been weaponized by the media, or burnt out by rage, which has also been weaponized, taken in all directions, anywhere but our center. The light is being taken where it shouldn't. Perhaps black holes opened by CERN, mass rituals, egregores. But this ember inside us can become an inferno once we connect with our core. When we open the door to our lighthouse, step inside, climb the spiral stairs, and give this ember recognition, which is a seed, the lotus, and breathe air, which is the sea air, for we're in a vast ocean. From the top of our tower, our power, which is our lighthouse, we can see and we can become one with the sea and the flow of time. And then we can breathe fire, which is I am that I am. So, yeah, there's some things I wrote down there just to do with that. our internal tower is our power, because T and P can be interchanged in language, and that lighthouses have a spiral staircase, which is correlated to the double helix, and that at the top of this lighthouse is a flame or a light. And I had I've had a couple of soul retrieval like journeys I've done. Like one of them, it wasn't so much perhaps soul retrieval, but it was to do with these plasma things, and this lady was channeling messages from my ancestors. And what was really interesting about that is that there are these two stories, one from my mother's side and one from my father's side. And then the story from my mother's side was that there was a story of my ancestor whose job was to be on top of this hill in this tower and to shine a light if an enemy was to ever come. And one day she fell asleep and didn't shine a light, and the town was taken over by the enemy. Then on my father's side, the person didn't know this, but I was born in Penzance, Cornwall, in England here, and my dad was born in Newlyn, the town next door, which is a fishing harbour town. And with my dad's side, this lady channeled that, bearing in mind I hadn't told her anything about where I was born or my dad, that there was this ancestor of mine who was in a lighthouse, and he was told to not shine the light because that would draw in enemy ships. But there were also friendly ships out there in the sea, and my ancestor didn't listen, and he shined the light to save the friendly ships that were out there at sea, and he lost his job. And I find this profound because I've been torn for a long time whether to share information or not. And I understand that now is from this DNA of one side not sharing the warning, not shining the light, and getting in trouble, and the other side, my father's side, getting into trouble for shining this light. And I just find the lighthouse interesting concept because me being a Capricorn, it's a sea goat, I'm very connected to both land and sea. And as I've kind of let go of this ancestral trauma, I'm starting to realize and understand that some things need to be shared, some not. And this fear of sharing information, because some people might find it not offensive, but they might find it negative and stuff. I really couldn't care less. I'll keep sharing stuff just for those friendly ships out at sea that need to see that light and that can come ashore. And I've always had this kind of scapegoat energy and always vibed with the scapegoat, which of course is Capricorn, the goat head. And I now know why it was. It's because one of my ancestors was scapegoated and told not to shine their light, because this person who told them that would rather have friendly ships sink to stop the enemy coming in. But I think that we should all shine our light, and that's what we've been scapegoated, and we've been gaslit into not shining our light. So perhaps next time, Franklin, we can get into alchemy and the extraction of the oil from a plant, which is the extraction of our Christos, or our consciousness, or our Sophia divine spark, wisdom, because we are the plant, and how this ties into adrenochrome, monatomic gold. And yeah, so perhaps we can get into that next time, what kind of alchemy is symbolically. I know you just spoke about it, but there's so much more we can go into with that, and how that we can kind of help shed our layers, which is trauma that has been put up that would basically make us come back here and relive, because lots of us have trauma, and that when we pass on, we'll want to forget this, so therefore we'll drink from that water. But how we can alchemize and dissolve these walls we've put up so that we can connect to our core and actually allow our light to shine, and not rely on the external light, which is this false light, this false information that we've been fed for such a long time. So Yeah, man, it's been a great conversation today. Thanks everyone in the chat who's joined us. Are you around next Tuesday morning?
Yeah, I reckon we can do it next Tuesday. Should be okay. Keep your voice.
Yeah. So today with the galactic calendar, the throat chakra today, and it's a blue monkey ruled by magic, which is interesting. Esme brought me the calendar for my birthday in January, and I haven't really looked too much into what it is. I've only just started using it.
Which one have you got? Have you got the dream spell, or have you got these are the Mayan calendars? Yeah. There are two different ones. There's the dream spell, and then there's the old classical, this was really popular a couple of decades ago, or maybe about 3 decades ago. It was really popular up until 2006 and 7. It started to lose popularity. By 2012, it got sort of forgotten. But it's like some really nice information out there.
So it's the galactic calendar, a multi-dimensional experience of time. So I'm not really sure which one it is. It's this is the front of it.
Okay.
This is. So I'll go on to today's day. It's the galactic moon of integrity, February the 7th through to 6th. And then, yeah. So today, February the 18th, is the throat chakra, blue rhythmic monkey guided by magic.
It looks like the dream spell. It's hard to say from like the image is not clear, but it looks like the dream spell symbols. Yeah, man. So like there's a lot of interesting. So I've taken a couple of notes down when you were talking, and we can try and remember to keep that focus on. I want to talk about the center. Like people don't realize the word center and its connection to Sagittarius, the centaur, Jupiter, yeah. And how this is like ingrained within. Those of you that don't know, the centaur is the arrow, the archer, and he's shooting his arrow at the center of the galaxy. That's what he's aiming at. Galactic center, the centaur. And Jupiter is Zeus, the principle of expansion. So what he's saying is that the universe is expanding from the center of the galaxy outwards. That's Jupiter. That's Zeus. That's Sagittarius. And the sage is somebody that can appreciate the center of the galaxy's expansion, and that this is an expansion of consciousness, which comes from the center of the galaxy, which is how we, come to be here. So I think that's also, we'll add that to the agenda. But thank you, dear brother. It's been an honor as always. We almost reached 3 hours. I don't know how we did that. We were supposed to be an hour and a half, but that's what happened. Much love to everybody in the chat. I hope you guys got what you came for. I hope you enjoyed the conversation. Dear Vincent Otigalili, sorry you came a bit late. Hey, Astara Lee, namaste. How are you doing? Sending you much love. Natalie and Tomru and Howard. I think Howard might have left. And everybody else, it was here. Was Gaz here? Did I see Gaz here earlier? I didn't see Gaz here. Hey, namaste, Jim. How you doing? I hope you enjoyed. Sending all of you guys big love, big blessings, peace, honor, respect. Take it easy. Keep your smile alive. Don't forget, life is short, so make the best of it. And by doing that, you can extend the presence of your life to be beyond this time. Big love, big blessings. Om Shanti, Namo Narayan, and Happy New Year to all of you guys. The fire horse, the horse of fire. Horses represent personal power, represent how we put our personal power into action, how we externalize that which is within ourselves. A horse is also a symbol of movement. It's of journeys and of travel. Horses were considered the most important thing in warfare in the ancient times, hence power, hence the ability to assert your will. So the idea of your personal will, and horses are very fundamentally connected, because a human's will to be anywhere they wanted to be was substantiated by the presence of horses. And they also represented, worked very closely with Mercury. You mentioned Merkaba earlier. Mer is water, means the sea. It's the old word for the word sea, and the Kaba. And so Mercury literally comes from the roots of the word mercantile, which has got to do with courier. The word courier has got etymological connection to the word Mercury, right?
And
so that's
cura as well. Cura.
Yes, a curio store is where you get stuff from travels. But the curio had to be couriered across the ocean. And the mer is the ocean. The curia is the curiosity coming in, bringing curiosity from other places here, information, trade. And so the Mercury is the administrator of the maritime. And the maritime is the proverbial ocean. So that idea of Mercury being connected to travel is over the sea, but travel over the land, that was Zeus, that's Jupiter, and that relates to the fire horse, and that relates to the personal will as opposed to the external will, right, of kings and queens, Mercury. So you were going to say something, brother?
Well, I just wanted to say that the fire horse is Sagittarius too, because Sagittarius is the centaur, a horse, and it's a fire sign. So it's just interesting. I don't know if you wanted to talk about Sagittarius because we've just gone into a fire horse, but it seems that aligns quite nicely. So,
exactly. Yeah. And how Jupiter, Zeus, is a big part of this, because obviously Jupiter rules Sagittarius. So there's this synergy of this wheel of fortune and temperance. Actually, this relates to also the suffering that river is trying to make us forget. So we will probably pick up a lot of the pieces from this conversation and continue it forward, if we can remember. Hope we do. Yes, the four horsemen. And yes, Howard, the mermaid, Mercury's, the mercy, exactly. Merci means thank you, doesn't it? Oh, you brought me a gift from overseas. Merci, thank you. So mercy is like gratefulness. There's an element of gratefulness in it. To be fully great, is to be grateful. So big love to everybody. Thank you, as always, dear Shinobi. It's been an honor. And enjoy the rest of your day and your week. Take it easy.
Much love.
Hey, Valence. Much love, Solaris. Unfortunately, we're on our way out. It's been almost 3 hours. Take it easy, everybody. Om Shanti.
Well,
see you next week.
Should we say?
Yes, brother.
Should we say to people? Should we say to people next Tuesday? Because I know we had to. I think on Saturday's roundtable you said going to be doing a live on Tuesday, but I tried typing to say I can't do Tuesday, so people might have been thinking we were going to do this yesterday. But next Tuesday morning, I'm 100% around. So I'm not sure if you want to decide to do it then. Let people know now that we will be doing it next Tuesday. Just so everyone in the chat now has a heads up to join us. Yeah, man.
If you can do it earlier, the reason for earlier is it makes it easier for people in the. Sorry?
I'm free from 8 a.m. So
that can work. That can work.
Yeah.
So 8 a.m. UK time.
Well, I know it's really late for Indy, but it gives him the option to join us too.
Yes.
Yes. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, we can do it early. How does that look with you guys in the chat, by the way? Let's ask people in the chat.
Good idea.
Is 8 a.m. GMT time any good for you? 8 a.m. GMT time would be 4 a.m. EST time. And 4 a.m. EST time would be, gosh, it gets confusing when you start to apply too many time zones. But think 4 a.m. New York time or 8 a.m. London time. If that fits you guys, good. Anyway, much love to all of you. Peace, Hannah. So then we'll do it 8 a.m. Do you want to make it 8:15 because your child leaves at 8?
They leave at 8, so 8:15 sounds good.
8:15.
Yeah.
Give him time to go and use the loo, get himself a cup of tea. He's British, remember? He's got to drink tea all day long. Am I right or wrong?
Absolutely. Yeah, man.
You wouldn't be British if you didn't, brother.
I've even got a tea on my tea. So
Nice one.
Yeah.
Big one. Well, it's been an honor.
Right.
Big love.
Much
Om
love.
Shanti. Take
See
care.
you later. Bye-bye.
Peace.